Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Next Gen Sales, AI-powered sales without the silos. I am Manuela Barcenas. I am the head of marketing at Fellow, and I'm honored to be here with Shannon Lahed and Charlie Bahamonde. Shannon is our senior product manager at Fellow. She was also formerly a senior product manager at Thriver and a senior consultant at IBM. And Charlie is Fellow's director of sales, formerly an enterprise account executive at ClickUp and an account director at Aquent. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to hear your insights on how AI can help sales reps and sales managers, directors, and leaders speed up their processes. So to get started, Charlie, I wanted to ask you a bit about the context. Like, I know you've been in sales for a few years now, and you were telling me the other day that you feel that things are changing and evolving really quickly. So what's your point of view on the landscape right now for sales reps?
Yeah, I think more so than ever, we expect a lot from our reps, and more so than ever, there's an overwhelming amount of technology out there meant to solve or streamline, reps workflows and problems. I think that the challenge is with all that overwhelming technology, we're seeing more problems occur from it, right? So now reps are spending a ton of time in a bunch of different locations, responsible for updating multiple systems. And I think where we're going to be sort of pivoting into is more of a consolidation point. So right now, right, there's silos between technologies, silos between information not up to date, lack of insights across the company, and reps are spending more and more time in their tools and not enough time selling. It was a stat that I read from the State of the Sales and Salesforce report recently that I think it's like 28% of a rep's week is actually spent selling, which means more than 2/3 of their week are spent doing other things that actually aren't driving revenue to them or the business's bottom line.
Wow. And for all those sales directors and managers in the audience, 28% sounds like very little time spending on what sales reps should actually be doing with the majority of their time, right? So you're saying that almost 70% of the time is spent in admin work?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and that's something we want to help change with technology and AI. So in this webinar, like we've planned this specifically, like I said before, for sales leaders who are in the audience today, want to learn some best practices to evolve and to learn, like how the AI landscape is evolving and changing and can help their teams. So we've planned 4 best practices that Charlie will be sharing with all of you. So whether you are a current Fellow user or not, we hope that you will leave this webinar full of tactical advice and best practices that you can implement with your sales team. But Shannon, who is our product expert here at Fellow, will also be showing you how some of these best practices can be applied with the help of AI and an AI tool like Fellow. So, Charlie, why don't we start with the first best practice for all those sales leaders that are in the audience? I would love to start by talking about preparation. When coaching your team, when building your sales teams, what do you tell them about the importance of preparing for their sales calls and meeting with prospects?
Yeah, so I kind of think of it in two threads. First is, someone contact prospect company we haven't and no one else here has spoken with before. So typically you're going to want to be doing a whole bunch of pre-call research to understand who you're talking to, who that person reports to, what that company does, what they care about, what challenges they or other people in their industry or role may run up against. And that can be a whole host of tools you'll be using for that research. Things like LinkedIn and ZoomInfo and SalesNav and Apollo and Crunchbase and Google and ChatGPT and researching employee 10Ks, right? So there's a whole lot in there. And then I think the other piece of this would be who at my company, so who else at the company that I work for has spoken with someone, either that person or someone else at that person's company, which brings a whole host of other tooling that you have to search, like email and CRMs and content management systems. So there's a lot of research that goes in just in the preparation before jumping into a conversation.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but can you think of some non-negotiables, like things that you shouldn't show up to a sales call without having prepared in advance?
Yeah, I think just baseline, it's, who that person is you're speaking to, what they or someone in a similar role cares about, what that company does, right? How they make money, and is there any relevant news or information that's come out about them recently, which might have them either wanting to or potentially looking at a solution like yours.
Yeah, that's great advice. And Shannon, can you please show us how, with the help of AI, preparation can be more efficient?
Yeah. So in Fellow, we want to help you be prepared for your customer meeting with as little effort as possible on your end. So you can reduce that amount of time that you're spending doing administrative tasks and spend more time in front of your customers. So there's a couple ways that we are helping make this easier for you in Fellow. So let's say you have an upcoming customer call. You'll see a pre-meeting brief about that person that you're about to meet with. So you'll be able to see information about their current role, previous roles that they've been in, and other information about that person so that you can feel prepared going into that call. And like Charlie mentioned, other people in your organization may have already met with contacts within the customer's organization. And we've made it really easy for you to see information about that account with our HubSpot and Salesforce integration. So we pull up that key information next to your note for the meeting that you're about to have with the customer, as well as you can click on that information to go directly to that record in your CRM if you're looking to dig deeper. And then lastly, one of the most important things is coming to that meeting prepared with what you want to discuss with that customer. And you can do that with our agenda by adding talking points that you want to cover, as well as leveraging our agenda templates. So you can set those up for different frameworks or different types of calls to make sure that you're hitting on those key points.
I will say that pre-meeting brief was very accurate. I know it was an example and it was my LinkedIn profile, but I was very surprised to see how accurate it can be. Charlie, are you finding this to be helpful for sales reps on your team?
Yes, they're using it a ton. I think it helps centralize a lot of the information that they would typically be clicking through, like I mentioned, 4 or 5 different websites for. And since we're already spending most of our time preparing for calls inside Fellow, conducting those calls inside Fellow, it just helps reduce some of the context switching.
I think what you just said about conducting the calls in Fellow, having the agendas in Fellow, this concept of having it all in one place relates to the second best practice that I wanted to ask you about, which is making coaching sessions actionable. So we want to talk about how sales leaders, I know it's your responsibility to coach sales reps and make sure that they are, going in the right direction in terms of like their performance and their sales calls. So, what's some advice that you have for sales leaders, or perhaps I'll rephrase my question by saying, what's one mistake you see managers make when it comes to coaching sales reps?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake for newer managers who are usually, top performing reps, that's how you end up getting promoted typically to a manager position, is they don't stop being a rep. So they are now just jumping on their team's calls and trying to be a super rep and close those deals for their team. So I think a different philosophy is providing more like pre-call coaching and practice so that when you are joining those calls for your reps, they've already had enough repetitions to understand things like how to overcome objections and how to properly like ask second and third layer questions. So kind of think of it of like practice and play, right? The way you're going to improve and hone your skills is by practicing, not by doing it in real time in a game.
Yeah. And how are you using your one-on-ones to make sure that those conversations happen?
Yeah, so we typically have separate weekly conversations just for coaching, and all of that is done inside Fellow. So a lot of my time is spent listening back to calls and having the reps share calls with me, and then me picking out commonalities and themes on what I'm seeing, right? 1 or 2 things across all of their calls that I think could be improved upon. And then we're focusing our coaching calls on where those skills can be improved,
Mhm.
practicing either on those calls or with some of the other reps, and then revamping typically our templates. That is how they prepare and conduct those meetings to reflect some of the practice and changes we've talked about.
Yeah. And just to get super tactical, I'm curious about something that you said. Do you ask the sales rep to bring one call to review every week?
It's more than one. So you can spend endless amount of time, right, researching a whole bunch of different calls, but it's sort of a needle in a haystack. How do you know the ones that like are worth either viewing or not? So I put a little bit of onus on the reps. I want them to share with me either a call, a few calls, or clips from a call of something they're proud of, right? Something that we're working on that they actually did well and put into practice, and or things that we're working on a call that they felt could have gone better. So I'll still spot check and do my own call due diligence and research, but I also want them to bring call and conversations to me.
Yeah, that's a great way to make sure, they're accountable. They bring in stuff for you to review. And Shannon, I'm excited to see how sales managers can do that in Fellow, because Charlie spoke about clips, and perhaps some people in the audience don't know what a clip is yet. So I'm excited to see.
So it's really easy to create a clip. So once you've gone into a past meeting, you can click to create a clip, and then you can select the portion of the meeting that you want to include, and then you click save. From there, you can either send it directly to your manager, let's say if you're the direct report, or vice versa, if you're the manager sending it to your direct report, or you can copy the link and copy that into your one-on-one agenda. This is really great as a place to add in these coaching notes and clips throughout the week so that you can have them gathered and ready to go. So when you're about to have that one-on-one, you already have everything together. So you can just focus on that conversation with your direct report with that supporting clips and materials to reference. So let's jump into what it looks like to have a one-on-one in Fellow. So here's an example one-on-one that I'm having with Charlie. And I can add talking points about some wins and successes that I've had this week, as well as he's added a clip here for a call that he had some feedback for me on, as well as he has signed an action to me to watch a call of another rep on our team who really demonstrated a skill that I'm working on. And one last thing I'll mention about one-on-ones in Fellow is you can easily see all the past meetings that you've had in the same stream. So you can reference back what were the things that I said I was going to work on last week to make sure to follow up on those this week.
I think this is a game changer, but I am not the sales expert here. Charlie, how do you think this changes the game for sales teams, just having everything located in the same platform?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what I was saying before around like context switching, right? Some companies may not even have call recording and transcription, which is a tough thing to overcome. But if you do, is likely a whole bunch of different tools that you're using for that versus like checking your CRM for data versus building those one-on-ones in maybe a Google Doc or a note. I think having all of that information centralized in one place not only like streamlines and creates greater efficiency, but then also allows you to share that information with your rep ahead of time. I think like what I think of is a bit of a flywheel when it comes to Fellow, right? So it's how are we like preparing for those customer calls, executing on those calls, follow up on those calls, coaching and practicing with our manager, and then like receiving feedback, putting that feedback back into the preparation for that meeting, right? So all of that is done inside Fellow.
Yeah, it's amazing to see that with this new era of AI, everything you've talked about can be done inside of Fellow. So very, very cool. And for those people in the audience who, have not had a chance to try Fellow yet, but they might after this webinar, I know we have a third best practice that we want to share with them on maintaining the CRM up to date. I've heard from a lot of maybe account executives, friends who are in sales, that this tends to be the most tedious part of their job. Would you agree, Charlie?
Definitely.
Yeah. But why does it matter? Why does it matter? And like, what have you done in the past to make sure that you keep yourself accountable to update the CRM?
I mean, baseline, all that information rolls upwards, right? So if a rep doesn't have his information up to date and you're managing a whole bunch of deals, then it's hard to keep track and understand like where you should be focusing and what the priority items are. If that's happening, then that rep's manager doesn't understand, right, where he should be focusing with his specific reps and all of the deals that they're working across his team of reps, right, and where they can have the greatest impact, which then affects things like forecasting for rolling up to, the VP of sales or the CRO. So I think like it helps from an efficiency standpoint, but also understanding like where you should be spending your time.
I can show you how Fellow can help with this and take off that heavy lifting of doing those tedious tasks of updating your CRM. Okay, the first thing that I want to show you is what it looks like when you go to view a summary for a customer call that was recorded with the Fellow AI Copilot. So you can select from some templates that we've made available for different sales frameworks to be able to get the notes from the call in the framework and methodology that you're using. And then you can send these notes to Salesforce or HubSpot, and you can also set it up so that they automatically send to your CRM. So that means when you've set it up, that you can set it and forget it. So you can go between your different calls, have them recorded by the Fellow Copilot, And those notes from the call are automatically sent to Salesforce and HubSpot. And the last thing I want to show you, which I think is the most exciting, is not only are we sending those notes to HubSpot and Salesforce, but you can get field level suggestions for updates that the Copilot is recommending you make based on the conversation that you had with the customer. So if I click AI suggestions here and select the opportunity, I then get real-time suggestions to the fields on this opportunity to make those updates. With a couple of clicks, I can update those fields in Salesforce. So I don't need to go into Salesforce to find the right records and manually make those updates, saving you a ton of time.
Wow. So here, Fellow Copilot is suggesting that Alex is the decision maker. The pain points are inefficient remote meetings and time consuming post meeting work and their tool stack, all based on the transcript.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very cool. Any commentary on this, Charlie?
This is like one of the most heavily used features for me and my team. Again, I feel like the theme that I'm sharing here is all about like minimizing context switching and centralization. So again, like when you're preparing for the call, if you need to see who you're speaking to, if there are any open deals, anyone else at that account you've chatted with, all of that information is available to you right inside of Fellow, and the click of a button, you'll jump right to that location inside your CRM.
That's great. And just a quick reminder for our audience members that Charlie and Shannon will be doing a live Q&A in a few minutes. So if you want to stick around and ask them a few questions, you are welcome to do that. Last but not least, there's a fourth practice that I would love to discuss here, which is actually the reason why we call this webinar AI-powered sales without the silos. We've heard from a lot of customers that they're encountering this issue where their sales insights are siloed. It's really hard to share them with other teams or make them accessible to other teams. And as a marketer, I learned so much about our customers and our users from watching sales calls and perhaps like also customer success calls after. Charlie, just like to go back to the best practices, what are some of those insights that the sales team should be sharing?
Sales is kind of on the front lines with customer interactions or like sales and success and support. I think there's a whole host of like pieces of information for various accounts that you need to like get in front of other departments or teams. So I think about after a deal is closed won, right? How do you take all of the information across your history with that customer and share that with your sales enablement team, with your solutions engineering team, with your onboarding team, with your customer success manager? Then there's product specific things, right? So either like a feature that a customer wants to see or a product gap we have with a current deal. How do we take the information that's gleaned from that conversation and share that with the product team? And a lot of times we're playing a game of telephone, right? Where like we're interpreting what the customer said and then sharing that with product and they're interpreting it. Inside Fellow, all you need to do is just clip that information out and proactively share it with the team members who should be getting in front of it.
Yeah, I know in a previous conversation too, you mentioned that there's like two types of insights, right? Like the ones that the sales team shares within the sales team to help each other get better, and then the information that the sales team has to share with other teams in the company. So, yeah, what are some examples of those insights that the sales team shares internally within your team?
Yeah, so we have our own channel set up. So we publish all of our calls to a specific channel that the sales team has access to. Within that channel, then we break those calls out into, right, like understanding what good looks like. So you have discovery calls or pricing calls, negotiation calls, demonstration calls. What that does is it helps like everyone on the team learn from each other, but also really helps with onboarding new reps and team members because all they need to do is be directed to that channel and they can see a whole host of information around every single piece or conversation that makes up their deal cycle.
Yeah. And again, getting very tactical here, do you have perhaps like a team meeting where you discuss some of these calls, like the what good looks like?
Yeah, so we do a weekly call review. So outside of like our weekly coaching and practicing, we also do a weekly call review where I'll just pick a rep, pick a call, whether it be everything from demonstration to a closing call, discovery, you name it, and we'll listen back to it before we get on that call and then sort of clip it out during that call and figure out different paths or ways that they could have kind of changed the outcome from that conversation.
Okay, very cool. You know, at Fellow, we love learning about meetings and doing research about meetings. So you've talked about your biweekly coaching, right, with sales reps, or was it weekly?
Weekly.
Weekly coaching calls, those are one-on-ones, and you also do this weekly team meeting to review calls as a team.
Mhm.
And apart from those, do you have other team meetings that you would recommend sales leaders schedule?
Forecast calls are one. We've eliminated them here at Fellow as a small part of our one-on-one are spent using that forecast. I'd rather give everyone that hour in their week back. Typically, forecast calls are spent, a rep may speak for 5 to 10 minutes and spend the remaining 50 to 55 minutes listening to everyone else. That's not really a good use of time. So in the Fellow theme of efficiency, I'd rather focus on those forecasting calls and do them one-on-one with the reps as part of their one-on-one conversations and not make the whole team listen to 50 or 55 minutes of a conversation.
Okay, that's another very good tip for sales leaders in the audience. And Shannon, I would love to see how Fellow can help break those silos and make information sharing easier for sales teams.
Yeah, so there's a couple of features in Fellow that I'm excited to talk about here to highlight what Charlie's saying. So, like Charlie mentioned, you can set up a channel. So all of your sales team's calls will be shared there, which makes it really easy for someone in product like myself or someone in marketing like Manuela to go into that channel and look at the most up-to-date calls to be able to listen for those customer insights. The other thing that you can also do is use our search to be able to search against keywords in the transcript if you're trying to find calls where certain topics were discussed. And that's an area that we're going to be investing in as a company. So look out for some exciting updates on that soon. And then the last thing that Charlie mentioned was being able to create a channel in the library where you can have those best example calls. So you can point reps to go and take a look at that channel to be able to rewatch those calls. And then the last thing I'll mention is, again, the ability to clip those great examples from those recordings and then add them to the agenda of your team meeting so that the team can review those in advance.
Thank you, Shannon. So before we move to the Q&A portion of the webinar, Charlie, what are some words of wisdom that you would like to leave sales leaders with?
Yeah, I think like in the theme of AI, right? There's no shortage of tools and technologies out there that provide some type of AI boost or benefit. Probably where things are going to start shifting soon, if they arguably haven't already, is more consolidation around AI. So not looking for a specific tool to solve a minor problem within a team, but looking for a tool that solves multiple problems across multiple teams or even an entire organization. Following that same theme I've probably been sharing before around like efficiency and centralization, I think that's really where AI will be going next.
Awesome. So let's go to the Q&A and make sure to get your questions ready for Shannon and Charlie. Thank you both.